And we are live. You already know who it is. My name is Mike Kyle, aka the Fantasy Vulture. I have over a decade worth of fantasy football experience, and I've continuously competed for fantasy championships over the course of the past 6 seasons. Let's get 7 in 2020. But enough of me. I'm here for you. On today's episode of the FB Show, we're going to continue our Week 4 game recaps, breaking down every single Week 4 matchup, all through the lens of fantasy football. Up next, the Seattle Seahawks taking on the Miami Dolphins. So if you are excited for this game recap, be sure to hit that like button down below like an open receiver downfield. Also smash that subscribe button like a power running back up the middle so that you never miss a video from me. Last but not least, you can follow me on all social media platforms at FFVulture. And let's just dive right in, shall we? The Seattle Seahawks taking on the Miami Dolphins in Miami. The Seahawks won and improved to 4-0 by a final score of 31-23. Russell Wilson let Russ cook continued. 24 of 34 passing, 360 passing yards, and 2 touchdowns. He ties Peyton Manning for the most touchdowns through 4 weeks at 16. Carson also found his way into the end zone twice, took a bit of a scary hit in this game, was being evaluated for a concussion but did return. 16 carries, caught 3 or 4 targets for a total of 100 yards, and of course those 2 scores. DK Metcalf. The train continues, the hype train keeps rolling, and the momentum keeps shifting as well. Metcalf, only 6 targets, Holden 4 though, but racked up 106 receiving yards. And David Moore is the story here because I believe for the second straight week, he has put up numbers, hauling in 3 of his 4 targets for 95 yards and a touchdown. Tyler Lockett was pretty quiet throughout the majority of this game and really did his work in the second half and more so in the fourth quarter than anything else. Only 4 targets, hauled in 2 of them for 39 yards. Definitely a bust game for Lockett, all things considered. Moving over to the Dolphins here, the losing team. Ryan Fitzpatrick, we were saying that this was going to be a great match to play him in, and that was correct. Fitzpatrick, 29 of 45 passing, 315 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Also had a few rushing yards as well, it's 47 to be exact. Myles Gaskin, we saw the breakout happen last week. What would week 2 of Myles Gaskin's season look like? And honestly, it was a bit disappointing, right? Coming off of that 22 carry performance last week versus Jacksonville, I was expecting more than 10 carries. Also didn't get the receiving work that I was anticipating. Hauled in 3 of 4 targets for 62 total yards and did not find his way into the end zone. But Devonte Parker, everything that we were saying about this game came true for Devonte Parker. 12 targets, 10 receptions for 110 yards. Unfortunately, didn't find his way into the end zone, but that's all right. He still played pretty well in this game. And also, important to note, Isaiah Ford, second-year player from Virginia Tech, actually third-year player out of Virginia Tech, had 10 targets in this game. We've been waiting for another player to step up here, and nobody really has, and by that I mean in the receiving corps specifically. And for Ford to come in with 10 targets, and this is actually the second game where he's had a high target total. He had 9 in week 2 versus Buffalo. I'm starting to wonder if we need to start to pay attention to Isaiah Ford moving forward. But let's jump back in here, shall we? Let's talk about this game just a little bit. So the big thing here for me, at least, is this. Where do we go from here with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, right? Metcalf has been exceptional so far to start the season, right? And I think it's something that a lot of us were anticipating, but I didn't think it would happen this way, and even more so this quickly. Metcalf specifically, and you just look at the production in half-point formats, 17.5, 17.2, 16 flat, and then 12.6. I mean, Metcalf is literally just balling out right now. He scored a touchdown in 3 out of 4 games. He's had over 90 receiving yards in every game, has had over 6 targets in every game. And if this was the wave, right, for let Russ cook, like Metcalf was going to be such a big beneficiary of this. I actually read a tweet earlier that said, like, DK Metcalf is on pace for 1,400 yards. And that's insane, right? He had 900 last year. So we knew that, like, I knew that 1,000 yards was easily going to be smashed. Like that, there was no debate there. I thought 1,200 would probably be the cap, right? But 1,400, like that is absurd. That is absurd. And of course, with Russ and then their willingness to now let Russ be Russ and air it out and chuck it. Just these talented wide receivers that they have. Like, this team is 4-0 for a reason, but they're 4-0 because of their offense, not their defense. You go through what their defense has given up so far throughout this season, even 23 points to the Dolphins, which is a fine number, right? This defense is injured. This defense is shaky on multiple levels. They did have 2 interceptions today, which, good for them. But this team is going to be carried by their offense. And that's something that I've noticed a lot about multiple teams throughout the NFL so far this season. Specifically, you can look at the Cowboys, you can look at the Falcons, and you can look at the Seahawks, where all 3 of these defenses are not great, but their offenses have the ability to drop 50 on anybody on any given week, and will do so if allowed, right? And so with that, this team is going to go as far as their offense takes them. And when their offense has the ability to run the ball with Chris Carson and score 2 times that way, while also getting 2 touchdowns from Russ, this is just a team that can beat you 47 different ways, right? You take away DK Metcalf, well, you got Tyler Lockett sprinting on the outside. You want to try and take away their pass game, well, guess what? They can just hand the ball to Chris Carson 20 times a game instead. You want to find a way to shut down both those? Oh, well, guess what? Greg Olsen is going to find his way to sneak into the end zone once or twice as well. I love the way that this team is shaping out to be. I know I was a bit panicked about Chris Carson earlier in the season just because of the way that Let Russ Cook unfolded. It would mean that Chris Carson's value would ultimately take a hit. And we did see that last week as well, where Carson didn't get the ball multiple times at the 1-yard line. But even so this game, he was getting those opportunities. And he did have, again, 16 attempts on the ground while getting 4 targets through the air. So Chris Carson is going to be super valuable in this offense, and he's going to continue to maintain that value. That was just the big thing. My biggest concern from Carson earlier in the season is what would happen to his value. And it turns out that his value is safe, his floor is safe, and we know what we're going to get from Chris Carson every single week. And in fact, this was the thing that I thought was actually maybe a bright side for Carson, right? Teams wouldn't have to stack the box against him on 1st and 2nd down. And now that Seattle is now shifted towards this pass first team on 1st and 2nd down instead, it makes defenses have to approach things differently now. Seattle can give them 2 or 3 different looks, and that defense has to be prepared for all 3 of them. And that just means that Chris Carson's value might actually be higher now in a way, right? Because if this team continues to move the ball and continues to drop 30 points a game, how can you stop them, right? So that means that Chris Carson so far this season has, Chris Carson so far throughout the season in 4 weeks has 5 touchdowns, right? He had 2 in week 1. He had 1 in week 2. Didn't score last week. Also got injured in the 4th quarter there. And then put up 2 again in this week versus Miami. So I'm really excited about Carson moving forward. I saw a few people panicking about Tyler Lockett, and Lockett has these games sometimes where he does just disappear. It's just kind of a thing that happens. That like he'll be like good game, blip game, and then good. So I do just want to reiterate this one more time here before people start to panic about Tyler Lockett or DK Metcalf, because both guys are extremely talented. Like, why are we doing this? We don't have this isn't one of those things where you have to pick a side. They can both be good, they can both be fantasy relevant, and they can both be productive, right? And they can both be integral parts of this offense because their play styles are so different, right? DK being that big body wide receiver that can go up and make plays, whereas Tyler Lockett is the speedster who can sneak behind defenses or catch the ball over the middle of the field and then take it to the house. So one more time, just to reiterate with Tyler Lockett, just the target numbers and everything that's gone on throughout the first 4 weeks of the season, excluding this game, like I said, had 4 targets, caught 2 of them for 39 yards. Okay, we'll throw that into the trash. But before that, guys, come on, what are we doing here? 8 targets, 13 targets, 8 receptions, 7 receptions, 9 receptions, 92, 67, 100, 0, 1, 3. I don't need to say anything here. Keep playing Tyler Lockett. Don't panic. This is just one bad game. Please do not tilt trade Tyler Lockett after one game like this where DK Metcalf played extremely well. Metcalf, one more time, I'm sad. And the reason why I'm sad and the reason why I'm clapping is because that's the thing, right? I've been a DK Metcalf believer. When everybody was saying, "Oh, he's just a big athlete. He's a raw route runner and XYZ before the draft." I was like, "What the fuck are we talking about here?" DK Metcalf had every single goddamn tool to be a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL. And when his draft stock just kept sliding and sliding and sliding, I'm like, "What are we doing?" Like, that was, and then obviously Seattle, being a good organization, drafts him, right? And I've had this conversation with multiple people. Drafting cannot be this hard. NFL GMs, NBA GMs, and MLB GMs, they all make drafting way more difficult than it needs to be, because half this shit feels so obvious, right? How do you let DK Metcalf, a guy who dominated in college, a guy who is 6'4", 230 pounds, how do you let him just slide off the draft board because he's a raw route runner? Are you fucking serious? You guys are in the NFL. You guys have coaching that can fix that. And do you guys know what DK Metcalf's route tree has looked like over the course of the past year and a half? Instead of just going like this, it's now this way and 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 this way. Oh, they developed him as a route runner. That's pretty interesting, because that's your fucking job. It can't be this hard. It can't be this hard. I'm so happy to see him have so much success this early on in his career, because we all knew this was possible, or at least I thought we all knew this was possible. But it does make me sad, because as you guys know, I traded DK Metcalf in Dynasty this offseason for A.J. Brown and Zach Moss, and both those players are injured, while DK Metcalf is now balling out for 4 straight weeks. It's tough times for the Mike Van over here. I want to switch gears now, and I want to talk about the Dolphins real quick, just because they were the other team also in this game. Fitzpatrick continues to just do Fitzpatrick things, and that's he's going to chuck it up 40 times, and he's also going to make some mistakes, and he's also going to throw for 350 yards and score twice. And Ryan Fitzpatrick is the epitome of the YOLO quarterback, but like, he's so good for like, Ryan Fitzpatrick is Jameis Winston 2020, and that just makes me so happy. Because we get a guy where, you're in a pinch and you need to start a quarterback, just grab Fitzpatrick. Doesn't matter, right? Fitzpatrick this season, 6 points, 27 points, 26 points, 24. Ryan Fitzpatrick is so good. He's so good for fantasy. He is the perfect fantasy quarterback, right? Moving over to the running backs here. Again, Myles Gaskin, yes, he didn't get the workload that I was expecting him to this game. This game admittedly was a bit weird. Just going through and watching it, like, it was a bit of a stalemate at first, and then Seattle got hot a little bit, but Miami still wasn't moving the ball quite well. And then Gaskin wasn't getting the receiving work, and then he also wasn't getting the carries for the majority of the game. Then all of a sudden, he finishes the game with 10 carries, 40 yards, averaging 4 yards a carry, and then gets 4 targets, hauls in 3 of them for 22 yards. So, like, it was a fine game, but it should have been better. Like, 7.7 points in a half-point format admittedly probably killed you if you played him at your flex. But luckily for me, I was able to withstand that. It was just weird. Like, going through the other Dolphins player, like the Dolphins backfield, right? Because Gaskin still played 66% of the snaps, which is where he's been pretty much for the past 3 weeks. But then you go over to Matt Breida. Breida had 3 carries, also saw 3 targets, so, like, he did nothing, though. Like, that's the thing. If you look comparatively at Gaskin, Breida, and Jordan Howard, like, Gaskin's the guy, and for whatever reason, they once again, they shied away from it. And I think that's just very, very weird, considering last week that they gave him 22 carries. How do you go from 22 carries to 10 carries, and even less receiving work last week, in a game where, for the most part, you were competitive with Seattle? But then also, if you were trailing, how do you not get him the ball? Just a bit odd for me, all things considered. I'm fine with Gaskin moving forward, though. I'm not going to panic or anything like that. Devonte Parker left this game early with an ankle injury. He did return, though, which was a good sign. And again, like, Devonte Parker, like, fire him up every week, because if Fitzpatrick is going to throw the ball 45 times, somebody has to be on the receiving end of that. And shout the fuck out to Fitzpatrick for reviving Devonte Parker's career. In all honesty, again, 12 targets. Like, the targets are there, the receptions are there, the yardage is there, and obviously the potential for a touchdown every single week with Parker is a good thing. My only concern with Parker is that I have this fear now that he has the tendency to leave games quite often. Is he Julio Jones in that aspect, where it's like he's going to leave the game, then he's going to return, but now he's only playing at 70%, and I got some minor concerns about Devonte Parker moving forward, not from a talent perspective or anything like that, but strictly from an injury one and a health concern. Other things to note here: Gesicki busted again. That's now for me 3 straight games, even though he's scored a touchdown and back-to-back in weeks 2 and 3. So he's had 3 games below 10 fantasy points and actually 3 games below 8, and that's just not a fun time for me, admittedly, for the tight end position. Again, I look for targets, I look for volume, I look for opportunity when it comes to tight ends. And Gesicki, I've talked about this in the offseason. Gesicki was a guy for me where it's like you had to pick the late round tight end that you wanted. For me, it was Jonnu Smith and Hayden Hurst. Looks like I did pretty well there. And I just wasn't a big fan of Gesicki for whatever reason. I think the athlete of Gesicki is there. I love the way that they use him, especially out of the slot. I just don't know what level of consistency he can provide you, and especially if this is 3 out of 4 weeks where he's had down games per se. It's not something that I'm super excited to start week in and week out moving forward, because I feel like he's going to hurt you now more than he's going to help you. Anything else here? I just want to mention Isaiah Ford again, just because Preston Williams hasn't stepped up, and I really felt like this was the opportunity. This was an opportunity for him to, especially in a game like this versus Seattle with that bad secondary, and it just wasn't. Preston Williams only had 3 targets, caught 1 for 15 yards, also had a 2-point conversion. Whoop-de-fucking-do. Isaiah Ford, yes, he had 10 targets, caught 4 of them for 48 yards. It's like, that's the thing. Fitzpatrick's going to throw this ball 40 times. Let's say he completes 29 of them like he did today. Who are those, like, outside of Devonte Parker, what's that breakdown going to look like? Let's say Devonte Parker catches 8 passes. Let's go 8. Gaskin's going to catch 4. That's 12. That then leaves, 17? That leaves 17 targets to go around, or 17 catches to go around to Maparita. We'll say 3. All right, so now you're at 14. Isaiah Ford, we'll say 3. So now you're at 11. Preston Williams, we'll say 3, right? Like, you can just see there's a lot of mouths to feed on this offense, but only maybe 2 of them are actually relevant, that being Gaskin and Devonte Parker. So I'm really just trying to shy away from the Dolphins if it's not those 2 players. Gesicki is maybe that other one where you just hold just to wait and see. But if it's anybody else on the fringe of the Dolphins, I'm not interested. But I think that's going to do it for my Seahawks and Dolphins game recap. If you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below. Try to do this for every single week for a matchup. You can also follow me on all social media platforms at FFVulture. Again, thank you so much for watching. Remember, people come and go, but fantasy championships are forever, and I will see you in the next video.